Okay. Good evening, everybody, and welcome to Onward Transition's first Family Forum webinar. This will likely be a little awkward because this is the first time we're doing it and trying to figure it out. So I'm Andy Durstein. I'm one of the clinicians and clinical director, and Jackie Roberge is our other full-time clinician. And in the background, who you don't see is Austin Melhorn, who's our program director in TechWiz, and he's sort of managing all this from behind the curtain. So bear with us. Like I said, it's going to be a little awkward. You can see us, we can't see you. If you have questions over the course of it, you can respond to the invitation that Austin sent out to you, or you can go directly to the Family Forum site to pose a question, and we'll try to get to them. So tonight we are going to talk with you about acceptance and commitment therapy, which is the foundational model that we use here at Onward, and present the matrix, which is a tool to help utilize it. And we felt it was particularly important to start doing these forums now during the COVID-19 shelter in place orders and with us working remotely, because we want families to be as informed and engaged to help support our members as possible. So the more you know about the work that we're doing, the better you can support your young adult children. So with that, acceptance and commitment therapy is a form of cognitive behavioral therapy. And the commitment part is the committed actions that we take towards moving towards our goals. And the acceptance part of acceptance and commitment therapy is an acceptance that as we move forward towards those goals, it's going to create some discomfort. That discomfort may be in the form of anxiety, self-doubt, nervousness, old patterns coming back, and an acceptance that we're going to experience that as we move forward, that those experiencing those uncomfortable feelings aren't signals that we shouldn't move forward, which is kind of the older way of thinking about anxiety, particularly. We're not scaling anxiety and saying you got to get your anxiety down to a 2 before you can apply for a job. We're saying that as you apply for that job, you're going to experience discomfort. And there are lots of things that you can do about that to keep moving forward. And it's a very versatile model that we're able to use with our members as they're working towards applying for jobs, getting back to school, taking on finances, all kinds of those practical day-to-day tasks of learning to be an independent adult. So with that, I'm going to hand this over to Jackie, who's going to explain the matrix, and I'll probably interrupt her and throw her off.
Thank you, Andy. So the main goal of ACT is to increase psychological flexibility. And in some more complex ways of looking at acceptance and commitment therapy, it's a little bit more difficult to get a grasp on describing what that could look like. In some of those more complex ways, we're going to visit that in the following weeks here. But the matrix is an easy tool to quickly start modeling flexibility. And we use it frequently here at Onward Transitions with our members. We use it ourselves. We use it in groups, individual sessions, all that good stuff. So with that said, I'm going to show you what the matrix looks like. So over here, hang on, let me, good old technology here. Okay, so you start with 4 quadrants, and then on the y-axis, the top, you have body. So that is kind of your external experience of the world. And then on the bottom of that axis, you have mind. So that's your internal experience. Most of our lives are spent in the internal experience, kind of our daily narrative, the story we tell ourselves. And the goal of this matrix is to move yourself up from the mind and just get a little bit more in touch with your external experience or your body. So that's where the mindfulness comes in with this tool. Let's see. So on the x-axis, we have towards, and that's specifically towards values. And then we also have away. And it's really important to notice the difference between towards moves and away moves. So that circle in the middle is just you noticing. So that's just saying that you're a person that is experiencing all of the things that we're going to talk about. Let's see. So what goes down in here in the bottom right quadrant is who or what is important to you. So this is basically your values. Unfortunately, when we think of our values, a lot of the time we think of like the things that we should be doing or the things that we shouldn't be doing. And then guilt and shame and all that stuff kind of plays a role. So who or what is important to you is a really easy way of asking, what are your values? So then we move to the bottom left. And what goes in this quadrant is when you're thinking about who or what is important to you, what shows up and gets in the way. These are thoughts and feelings. Usually they're the really like icky, gross thoughts and feelings that show up and prevent us from moving towards who or what is important to us. So then we move up to the top left quadrant. And what goes up in here is the behaviors that you engage in to quiet down what shows up and gets in the way. So the specific function of those behaviors is just to quiet down the discomfort. It doesn't move us towards our values, just kind of moves them away. There's no judgment here, so it's not good or bad, but they just serve the specific purpose of getting rid of some of those icky feelings. And then in the top right, we have our behaviors to move us towards our values. We also refer to those as committed actions. So those are the things that we choose to do despite the uncomfortable feelings and emotions that show up that move us towards our values. So accepting what's going on in the bottom left and still doing the top right is kind of the whole purpose of this model. It's also really important to note that when we are doing towards moves, that we get a sense of satisfaction or fulfillment. So that's a longer term kind of good feeling. When we're doing an away behavior, those tend to just be a temporary sense of relief. So we feel relieved, it's short term, and then usually that icky stuff kind of just starts showing back up again. So that's an important distinction on how you're going to feel depending on which side of the matrix you're falling. Andy, do you have anything that you want to add?
I'll throw in my metaphor now.
Yes, sounds great.
So values versus goals. And so the metaphor here is my value is going west. And so my goals support that value. So my goal first is to get in my car and drive to Chicago. And so I get to Chicago, I've achieved that goal, but I haven't achieved my value because we never actually achieve our values. We keep working towards them. So I get in my car and I continue driving west to Seattle, and I've achieved that goal, but the value still remains. But now I've reached the Pacific Ocean, so I can't get in my car and keep driving west to Moscow. And this is where the psychological flexibility comes into play. We have to sometimes adjust our goals under the circumstances in order to keep moving towards our values. So now I have to go out and rent a boat or buy a kayak or something and start paddling. And then once I get to Moscow, then I've got to modify my how I achieve my goals towards my values again. And this has been the kind of conversation we've been having a lot of lately during COVID-19, because the goals are a little bit smaller now and a little bit more incremental. The values have stayed the same, whether it's autonomy and independence or community or social connections. We can't all get together at the Pine House, which would be a goal supporting that value. But people can get together online, and we can continue to do activities, discussion groups. The members can get together and take a socially distant walk together. So the goals sometimes have to be modified. Again, that's the psychological flexibility, but the values remain the same. So thank you.
Absolutely. And I do think it's important, I did say this briefly, but just to kind of reiterate that The Matrix Act is a non-judgmental way of taking a snapshot of your daily life and what's going on. The goal is just to be noticing these different things as they happen, not labeling them as good or bad. And sometimes being on the left side of the matrix with behaviors to quiet down the icky thoughts and feelings, that's where you need to be. And that's totally okay. It's just a balance of the two is kind of what you're looking for to live a meaningful life. So I just thought that was important to say. So just a quick example of running through the matrix. I'm going to use myself here. So speaking publicly or doing a live stream like this makes me extremely uncomfortable and extremely anxious. So that's what shows up and gets in the way in the bottom left quadrant. Some of the behaviors I could have engaged in to quiet that down, or I could have avoided coming to this. I could have drank a bottle of wine before showing up, made it a little easier for myself. I didn't do any of those things. Instead, I'm sitting with all the discomfort and all the ick, and I'm still sitting here doing this, which is my committed action or my behavior to move towards my values. And my values are pretty simple in this instance. It's my job, it's the members, it's all of you as families. And so all of that keeps me sitting here doing this, even though super uncomfortable doing it. So that was just a quick example. Andy and I are going to walk you through some more examples that we see a lot with the members, just so you can see how we use the matrix in action so that you could potentially use it with yourselves or with your members in the future. All right. So Andy, where do you want to start on this?
Well, so let's start with the values that we work with members to identify, because that's the baseline. Mm-hmm. So that who or what's important to you, and also what kind of person do you want to be in this world, is another question to ask. And I would say amongst our members, not surprisingly, the value we hear most often is independence and autonomy. It's the thing that they've struggled most with. It's one of the reasons that they're here with us, working on moving forward. So that's a big one that they identify. Another is social connections. Many of our members have social anxiety. They've struggled, to make connections. So that's very important to them. Relationships, and values like kindness and compassion and caring about other people. Those are some of the very core values that we hear from our members. And so then from there, we start to look at, and we help them identify what are some of that bottom left quadrant, those difficult thoughts and feelings that you start to experience as you try and move towards those values. And for someone that's working towards independence and autonomy, I can't do this. I've never been able to do this. Every time I start to move forward with maybe going back to college or getting my own apartment for the first time, I crash and burn. So their past and the way they language their past is often in the background, and maybe not even in the background, playing a very active role in influencing how they think and feel about that goal of independence. For someone who has social connections as a value, who also has social anxiety, the difficult thoughts and feelings are the anticipatory anxiety and the reluctance to reach out, fear of rejection. People aren't going to like me. It's all those kind of self-limiting narratives that all of us, to some degree, create in our own minds that makes it more difficult to move forward. Any you want to add to that, Jackie?
For stuff that gets in the way, you pretty much covered it. The one that we see very frequently, and honestly, I don't know that I've ever done a matrix and not put this up there, is I'm not good enough. That's just like an underlying theme to all of our daily narratives. And I did just want to go back on who or what is important to you. And something that I really always emphasize with members is that they should be on there for who or what is important, because why else would we be doing the work that we're doing? Yeah.
I would.
Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say, back to the values, I would say almost universally, they also identify family.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, 100% of the time.
And you may or may not get a sense of that from your adult children, but it's there and it's very strong for them. They value the relationships. They have gratitude and appreciation for everything that you've done. They sometimes have a hard time expressing that.
Mm-hmm. And pets tend to go over there too. We do get pets a lot. Very valued members of the family. Yeah, for the stuff that shows up and gets in the way, I mean, anxiety, depression, all of that really fun stuff that we deal with a lot here at Onward.
The other thing I would add to that, Jackie, is, we're talking mostly about thoughts and feelings, but legitimate, real mental health challenges get in the way.
Mm-hmm.
The anxiety, the depression, ADHD, executive function weaknesses, that influences all of those difficult thoughts and feelings too. And when we get to committed action, sometimes part of committed actions is taking my medications and being compliant. But we'll get to that.
Mm-hmm. All right, we want to move up to behaviors to quiet down the icky stuff. So this quadrant is never short on responses. I feel like we fill this one out pretty easily. The avoidance, the Netflix, sometimes even listening to music and zoning out. Substance use usually falls up here. Andy, you got some?
Yeah, I mean, general avoidance, anything that you can think of that keeps you from getting to the thing you're supposed to be doing, helps to quiet down those difficult thoughts and feelings. And members will frequently ask, can those behaviors be both positive and moving towards and moving away? And the answer is yes. It depends how you're utilizing it. If reading a book is helping you move towards your value of learning, and being informed, then it's a moving toward behavior. If reading a book until 2 a.m. is keeping you from going to bed so you can get up for your job interview that you're really nervous about, then it's a moving away behavior. So they can serve multiple purposes, and it's the noticing that becomes important. What purpose is this serving for me right now? And really being honest with yourself about it. Sometimes folks need a little support in teasing out the difference between the two.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the gym tends to fall in one or the other, depending on what it's doing, right? If you're feeling super anxious and going to the gym helps calm that down, it falls on the left, and that doesn't mean it's a bad thing. But if one of your values is, health, overall health, then the gym falls over there. It's situational. And like Andy said, it's just noticing the difference between the two.
Yeah. Yeah. And, we're talking about behaviors that quiet these things down, but it's also ways of thinking. So, I'm too tired, I'll get to this tomorrow is a quieting down way of thinking, rather than I just need to fill out this application and get it done tonight. I'm going to rationalize not doing it and putting it off, not because I'm too tired, really, but because I'm a little too nervous, and that's causing me discomfort. So, the noticing is so important in recognizing, okay, am I engaging in some self-talk that's giving me permission to not take that committed action that I'm trying to move forward with?
Absolutely. And yeah, that one I think is a little confusing, the self-talk, but that is a behavior that we're engaging in. Even though it does kind of have thoughts and feelings in there, it can go on the top of that side versus down on the bottom. Which, yeah, a little blurry there, but does make sense. All right, so behaviors to move towards values or committed actions.
And so do you want to take this one, Jackie?
Sure. So thinking of independence and autonomy, something that can go up here is creating a independent living routine, just a daily routine to kind of get you through the day. Social connections, it could be, calling mom. We'll just put that on there. Relationships, kind of same thing. spending time with others, just getting out of the house sometimes moves us towards our values. Maybe you do that some more.
Sure. So, again, during COVID-19, we've had members who had the goal or the value of autonomy and the goal of getting a job. And then all of this hit, and it sort of changed the equation for them. And for for everyone, it's a valid concern. Do I really want to put myself out there in the public and risk exposure to the virus? Um, and some members have decided they want to move forward with that. So they are still out applying for jobs. And we just had a member secure a part-time job at one of the local grocery chains just yesterday. So, he moved forward with that committed action in the face of the discomfort of, there's a risk of getting COVID-19 by doing this. Other members, they come to a different conclusion that for right now, I don't want to take that risk. And that's not necessarily avoidance. That's some wise mind thinking. That's a very real concern that people have. But they can shift their goals. So instead of applying for a job right now, we have one member who is doing some online learning. And, so he's still taking committed action towards his goal of autonomy. He just had to shift, that short-term goal under the circumstances. But as I said earlier, for some folks, it's taking their medication, kind of an acceptance that, I struggle with clinical levels of anxiety or depression, and taking, even a low level of an SSRI, an antidepressant can help with that. And so being consistent with that, practicing base wellness. I'm going to take committed actions towards having a set sleep routine. And I'm going to take committed action towards eating healthy, because all of those things we know makes a difference in a person's well-being. For some folks, like Jackie said, it's getting outside, getting out and exercising, sort of maintaining those routines. There was another one that came to mind, and now I'm not thinking of it. Oh, I knew what it was. So, for members who carry a diagnosis of attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, or maybe they have executive function deficits or weaknesses, the committed action there might be getting up in the morning and making a list, and using those organizational skills that, as parents, you've been trying to instill in them for years and they've never quite accepted it. But, as an independent adult, recognizing these things really do make a difference. And so I'm going to work at that. And, one of the things, what we do a lot of things to try and help support this. We have our milieu coaches check in with members daily. So if they have a goal of making a list every day of the things they want to accomplish, that gets reinforced. Not harped on, but reinforced. So, we try and support them in their goals that they've identified. It's not us imposing the goals on them. It's us being there to support those purposeful behaviors in the service of their values. And this gets way more complicated. I mean, we go back and forth, so I'm working on one committed action, but it sort of sets in motion difficult thoughts and feelings in another area. And so there's a lot of processing of this that goes on. We don't strictly only talk to them in terms of the matrix, but we use that as a touch point to talk about their anxiety or talk about their uncertainties. Or, what's getting in the way of getting up and taking a shower and going out for that run that you plan to do today. So we're still able to integrate a lot of other treatment modalities, but use the matrix and ACT as sort of a base to organize that.
Absolutely. And something I think is important to mention is that laying it out like this allows you to notice what's happening and gives you more choices. So if we're living over on the left side of the matrix and we're engaging in behaviors just to quiet down difficult thoughts and emotions, and we don't realize that's happening, we don't have any choice but to continue to engage in those things that are just quieting down those thoughts and emotions, right? So once we write it down like this, we're able to see like, oh, I do have more options here, and I have options that move me towards my values, instead of just sitting over here in a spiral, just trying to quiet down these difficult thoughts and emotions. So that's another really cool thing about this tool, is it opens up choices because it opens up our awareness and increases our psychological flexibility.
Yeah. So sometimes for our members, as they're sorting out their values and who do they want to be in this world, it's coming to terms with the path that I was on in the past. I may have been doing that more to please other people, or to fulfill what I thought was everybody else's expectations, or I'm doing what every other kid in my high school that graduated seems to be doing. So, I've been going to college and it's been a struggle, and it just doesn't feel like it's what I want or need to be doing. It doesn't feel like my true path. And so some of this sorting out the difficult thoughts and feelings is making peace with, I want to change my path. I want to find a path that's more in line with my own values. And so, we work with a lot of these emerging adults in teasing that out. Whose value is this anyway? Um, and helping them get clear on that. And sometimes they stay on that path and they really work at the discomfort of staying. But for some of our members, it's they reevaluate some of that. And we've had some members switch from a college track to technical school, because that was more in line with their values and more in line with honestly working to their strengths. Someone with ADHD is more likely to be an experiential learner, and find greater success in that kind of path than sitting in a classroom. So there's a lot of different ways that these values and purposeful behaviors get sorted out. Sometimes that accompanying that, the difficult thoughts and feelings, is really kind of a sense of grief too. That they're having to come to terms with this path that I thought I was supposed to be on all my life, maybe isn't the path for me. That I see all my friends going off to college. I reconnect with them. They're finishing up college. I'm 3 years behind, and and then they frankly avoid for a while. They don't maintain their social connections because it's like holding up a mirror that is really hard for them to look at. So some of it is, that difficult thoughts and feelings is just coming to terms with accepting it's a loss in a sense, that this path I thought I was going to be on is not going to happen, and I have to let go of that. And there's some sadness, some disappointment, some worries that my parents may be disappointed in me, all those kinds of things. And we help them sort that out and keep moving forward.
So I think the ultimate goal of us showing this to you folks is that you know what the tool looks like. You can understand the basic concepts. You can have a different conversation with your child member about their values if they're engaging in behaviors that are kind of just quieting down uncomfortable feelings. It just opens up a different kind of conversation and allows you to utilize the same language that we're using with them, so that everybody can kind of be a team and work together towards their values. And certainly, if you want to whip out a matrix, whip out a matrix. I do think it's beneficial to say that I'm personally a big fan of writing this down on pen and paper. I think there's something to be said about handwriting things, and I think that makes this process a little bit more valuable. But for the purpose of showing it to you, we did it digitally. So certainly, you could whip out a piece of paper and sketch out a matrix and talk to a member about what's going on in their life that day, what's getting them stuck. You can use it for yourself too. Like I said at the beginning of this, we use this for ourselves. It's just a really easy tool to show what's going on in your daily narrative.
Yeah, and I agree. I think it's another way that you can support your adult children. You don't say this. My dad said this. When are you going to get a job? That That's not particularly helpful. But I think you can ask the question, what are you doing today, or what are you doing this week that helps move you towards those values that, those goal-based values, or value-based goals, I'm sorry. I think that's a much more supportive and a message that's more in line with the work that they're doing here. So I think we've pretty much covered this for tonight. Certainly, if any of you have questions, continue to send them in. We'll respond. We're working on what our next presentation will be and when that will happen, and we will certainly send out another email invite to let you know what the topic will be and when we're going to hold it. So. Thank you all for being here tonight. We appreciate your involvement and your support of your children.